Everyone tells you to get into data, but what they don't tell you is there are 3 main different careers in data. And if you don't pick the right one that best suits you, then you may end up doing work that you hate. So today I'm going to be breaking down the real differences between the data analyst, data scientist, and data engineer position. Not just the description fluff, but what an actual day-to-day kind of looks like in each of these roles and what kind of person thrives in each of these positions. So hi, if you're new, my name is Zazo. I've been working in data analytics for 4 years at this point, and I'm currently a senior data analyst. So I've worked with all 3 of these positions. Obviously I'm a data analyst, but I've worked with data scientists and data engineers and was able to pick their brain about their day-to-day and also doing a little bit of their type of work in my own role just for some experimentation. So really quick, let's start with some quick framing. And I like to think of these 3 roles as kind of like a restaurant. So the data engineer role specifically is kind of like the kitchen. So it's literally where the infrastructure, so the pipes, make sure you have running water, the storage for the food, the complete kind of like infrastructure of the kitchen itself. So they kind of make sure that the ingredients show up on time and are fresh. Now, the data analyst is more of the waiter. So they take what's available. They understand what the customer wants. So essentially taking the order, seeing what's available, and being able to serve it up on a silver platter. And then you have the data scientist. The data scientist is more like the chef. So this is the person in the back working on new recipes, new ingredient profiles, and running experiments to try to invent something or just some type of new creation that's never existed before. Now it's the same restaurant, just 3 different jobs. So now we're gonna start off with the first position, the data analyst. So what does a data analyst normally do on a day-to-day? Obviously, I can speak very in depth to this because I do hold a role of a data analyst at this point. So the main role of a data analyst job is to answer questions that stakeholders or essentially business people have while using the existing data that you have within the company. So for example, they'll answer stuff like, why did sales drop in Q3? Which customer segment has the most churn? And what's our best performing marketing channel? So mainly your tools are going to be SQL, Excel. You'll use some of your statistical analysis and knowledge in this role. There could be some Python and R in there, but you're not going to be super heavy. And then you'll have a data visualization tool like Power BI or Tableau. So a typical day, you'll be writing queries, cleaning data, creating dashboards, and sitting in meetings and answering questions about your findings. Now I'm getting into who will thrive in this data analyst role. You're probably a good fit if you love to solve puzzles and telling story with numbers. You're great at communicating, so taking numbers and being able to translate them into simple business terms that a CEO can understand. You want to see your work make direct impact on the business, and you're comfortable with unclear questions and being able to get through the problem even though it isn't perfectly defined. You might not love it if you want to build complex things, do more of the coding side, and be deep into mathematical statistics and modeling. The salary ranges anywhere from $65,000 to $110,000 for a mid-level data analyst role, but this obviously can be higher depending on what company you work for. All right, so the next position we will go to is the data scientist. So a data scientist builds models that use statistics and machine learning to predict outcomes in the future future. So that can be things like customer churn, forecasting, fraud detection, and even recommendation engines. You're definitely writing a lot more Python in this role. You'll be using things like scikit-learn and PyTorch, and even something like TensorFlow. You run experiments, you validate model performance, and then you work closely with engineering to deploy that model to production. Here's the reality that nobody talks about for this role. A huge chunk of this day-to-day is wrangling and cleaning up data. It's literally like 60 to 70% is just cleaning and organizing the data, where the other 30% is the actual model building aspect of the role. So now we'll get into who thrives in a data scientist role. You're probably a good fit if you love math and statistics, not just tolerating it, so actually enjoying it. You're curious and comfortable with uncertainty because models are never perfect. That's why you continue to evaluate the accuracy and make changes to that model. You like more research style of work, so where you form a hypothesis and then you kind of test that and be able to see that through. You have or are building strong Python skills. So you might struggle if you hate ambiguity or unclear directions or paths because it's very exploratory. If you don't like digging into deep math, or you want faster, more tangible results. Like I said, most models, I would say all models, are not perfect. And that's kind of the job of the data scientist, is to continuously test, reevaluate, and deploy their models in order to increase the accuracy and predict things that are coming in the future. So the salary range for data scientists could be anywhere from 100K to 160K from mid to senior level roles. All right, so now we got the next one, the data engineer. So what does a data engineer actually do? Data engineers build and maintain the systems that make all the other data work possible. Pipelines, data warehouses, data lakes, ETL processes, and real-time data infrastructure. So things like Spark, Kafka, Airflow, dbt, Snowflake, BigQuery. If those words or tools mean nothing to you, then this may not be for you. You're writing production grade code, mostly with Python and SQL, that runs automatically, handles failures gracefully, more importantly, scales to billions of rows of data. You're actually closer to a software engineer than most people expect. A data engineer does not analyze data, they just make sure that the data exists for those who do need to analyze the data. So who thrives as a data engineer? You're probably a good fit if you love to build systems and infrastructure, things that can reliably run in the background and scale. You think more like a software engineer, so you care more about code quality, scalability, and edge cases. You like solving hard technical questions rather than answering business questions. And you want to be the person that the whole team depends on. So you might not like this role if you want to interact with stakeholders, present your findings, or do statistical work. So the salary range for data engineers can range anywhere from 110 to 170 for mid to senior levels. Once again, all of these salary ranges depend on the company, and there are always, salaries that are on the lower end out of this range and on the higher end of this range. And typically the data engineer is the higher paid position, generally speaking, out of the three. All right, so how do you figure out which one is right for you? It really comes down to these questions that I'll go over here. Do you want to answer questions or build systems? If you're answering questions, you're either analyst or a data scientist, but definitely not a data engineer. But if you want to build systems, data engineering is perfect. The next question is, how much do you love math and statistics? So if you love it, you might want to go the data science route. If you like it or can tolerate it, maybe the data analyst. But if it's not for you and you prefer logic and infrastructure, the data engineering route is for you. Number 3 is, how much do you want to code? If you don't really want to code or minimal coding, data analyst is perfect. If you want to do significant Python and statistical coding, then you're going to be in the data science realm. If you want to do more production grade code, then it would be the data engineer. And then the fourth question you need to ask yourself: do you want to talk to business stakeholders? Not to say in any of these roles you will never speak to non-technical stakeholders. But if you're a data analyst, you're going to do it the most. Data scientist, you will do it occasionally. And data engineer, you will rarely do it, if at all. Depends on your company and kind of the business that you support. So there's technically no wrong answer, but there's definitely a wrong fit, and that wrong fit could cost you years. So here's the truth. This is everything laid out for these three positions in a perfect case scenario. Every company really differs, especially my company. Like I said, I've done the role of kind of all three of those and technically have only been labeled as a senior data analyst. Sometimes it's one person that does all of these roles. Sometimes it's very distinct and niche, and everybody stays in their lane. It all depends. However, what's the most important is that you pick the one that fits best for you. This is the end of the video. Love, peace, and chicken grease. I'll see you on the next one.